As a traveler, Ronan traveled to the Marvel world and awakened his unique golden finger. As long as he gains enough experience points, Ronan can upgrade and obtain skill points and brand new skills. Secret Method Gate +2. +2 features. It can traverse parallel universes and timelines, but requires manual confirmation of time. Each use has a cooling time of 6 months. Star Realm Projection +1. +1. Feature. Enhanced Soul Power. If the power of the soul body is below you, it can be instantly killed. So Ronan has always been extremely cautious. In his opinion, with his own golden finger on his back, as long as he keeps adding points, he can send a surprise gift package to the boss at the moment of the boss's arrival. However, he never expected that the first task from Teacher Gu-E would be participate in the revival of the Fourth Alliance and face the challenge. Keywords of the novel. Man in Marvel. Do you call this a wizard? No pop-ups, people in Marvel. Do you call this a mage? Download the complete TXT collection, Man in Marvel. Do you call this a wizard? Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Mages also need to go to school. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Mages also need to go to school. Commatage. As a learning base for apprentice mages, there are many apprentice mages here every day, following several disciples of the Supreme Master Gu-E for cultivation. In Commatage, there are 3 disciples of the Supreme Master responsible for teaching them spells. As the librarian of Commatage, Wang has the richest theoretical knowledge. Modu is very experienced in combat and is mainly responsible for training novice mages. As for Cassius, he is also the person who combines theory and practice the best, and is considered by many novice mages to be the strongest mage under the ancient era. Besides the 3 of them, Gu-E also has 1 disciple. A child who is only 16 years old. Ronan. It is rumored that he was an orphan encountered by Koichi when he went down the mountain 16 years ago. In order to keep this child alive, Koichi took him to live in Commatage. Overall, he is one of the few people who truly grew up in Commatage. However, whenever he is mentioned, most people's faces show very strange expressions. Because he is different from most mages, his most important job at this time is not to practice spells, but to attend classes in high schools in New York. At this point in time, he seems to are studying hard. The person they are talking about is undoubtedly Ronan. At this moment, Ronan was sitting in a classroom at Zhongqing Middle School, looking bored at the teachers on the podium. Who would have thought that the disciples of the Supreme Master Gu-E were actually wandering in a high school? Even, he has the essential golden finger for travelers. A golden finger that surprised everyone at first glance. 10 years ago, when Ronan was 6 years old, he first came into contact with the spells of Commatage. It was at that time that Ronan gave her a completely different shock. As an entry-level spell for Commatage, when Ronan began learning this spell, a very strange thing happened. Hanging Ring, as an essential item for releasing secret techniques, even if it is as strong as Gu-E, this move cannot be used without it. But Ronan, without using the Hanging Ring, followed the gesture taught by Koichi and opened the door to the secret method. Even when Ronan tried for the second time, he didn't even make any gestures. With just one thought, the door to the secret method was opened. You know, this is his first time encountering spells and casting them. However, Ronan understood that he was just adding a point. That's right, his system is very simple and rough, just adding points. Deep Blue, add some. Thinking of this, Ronan couldn't help but glance at his system interface. Name. Ronan, occupation. Student, mage, level. 4, experience. 15327/16,000, remaining points. 0, skills. Commatage. Meditation +2. It can quickly calm the mind and restore mana. +2 features. Accelerate the speed of restoring mana and slightly enhance mental power. Secret Method Gate +1. You can teleport to any place you have ever been through the Secret Method Gate. +1. Features. Exempt from hanging rings and gestures, allowing you to freely open the secret door for crossing. The Ring of Lagador. With both hands in the shape of a shield, it can withstand damage or attack. Energy Whip. Condensed into an energy whip through magic, it attacks enemies. Star Realm Projection +1. The soul can leave the body for learning, cultivation, etc., and can also directly attack the soul body. +1. Feature. Enhanced Soul Power. If the power of the soul body is below you, it can be instantly killed. That's right, you can't imagine a person with such power actually wandering around in high school. Accompanied by learning and homework every day. Unfortunately, this was an order given by his teacher Gui. Must be completed. Of course, using the word mixing may not seem so accurate. After all, Ronan's grades rank in the top 3 of the entire class. As for the top 2, Ronan glanced at a man and a woman not far away. Peter Parker. Gwen Stacy. The former, as a typical bookworm, has always been the target of bullying by school bullies. Over the years, Ronan finally saw the legendary American bullying. The latter, no one dared to provoke this princess in the entire school. If those little thugs in the rugby team don't want to be accidentally implicated in certain cases, they can only keep a distance from this little princess. As for Ronan, his current position has been achieved through the use of Kamataja's self-defense techniques, punching and punching. Ding-ling-ling. The sound of class ending sounded. This beautiful bell sounds like a redemption bestowed upon Ronan by God. Alright, that's all for this class. I will send the homework to everyone's email. Class is over. After saying these words, the teacher on the podium showed no attachment and turned around to leave the classroom. This is also what Ronan likes the most about them. Woohoo! As soon as the teacher walked out of the classroom, the phenomenon of unity among schools around the world also emerged. The classroom, where needles could be heard, suddenly became lively. As a famous bookworm, Peter Parker was the first to leave the classroom, faster than anyone else. If he were any slower, he might be blocked by several school bullies at the entrance, and the next thing can be imagined. However, Ronan did not manage so much. He just packed his things and walked quickly towards the door. As expected, several white students had already appeared at the door of the classroom. They were laughing recklessly, as if waiting for someone at the classroom door. However, as soon as Ronan walked out of the classroom, the laughter disappeared. The expressions on the faces of several white students also froze. You look at me, I look at you, both see a word in each other's eyes. Pain. Ronan, we didn't come to see you today. The student leading the way swallowed and seemed very nervous. However, Ronan only glanced at them and brushed past a few people. At the moment when the wrong person passed by, the breaths of several people seemed to have stopped, and once again became smooth. The person who just spoke to Ronan felt like a big stone had fallen to the ground. It's not because of anything else. Just because Ronan's fist is too heavy. However, in Ronan's heart, the weight of the few of them could not even compare to this beautiful weekend. After finally having a vacation to rest, spending time on these few people would be a huge loss. So, Ronan quickly walked out of the school gate. He wants to find an empty place to open the portal and go straight back to Kamatage. However, just as Ronan stepped out of the school gate, a deafening roar suddenly sounded. Next came the screams of many people. In the distant sky, an incredibly huge black hole appeared. One alien after another flew out of the black hole. Ronan couldn't help but open his mouth. Today is Double Union 1. Hello everyone, this is the author himself, Doghead, who has traveled through a month's timeline. Please make sure to follow through to the last chapter, as it is too important for a book. If you like it, please try to keep as few books as possible, because the recommendation for starting point is determined by how many people follow it. So, if you like it, please make sure to read the latest chapters. Please. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Unexpected Visitors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Unexpected Visitors Fake. Ronan spat out a curse from the United States in his mouth. Although he had seen this plot in his previous life. However, the specific date is really unclear. He only remembers the last time he heard about the members of the Alliance. It was when Tony Stark was attacked on the racetrack. That was over a year ago. But at that time, he was busy with middle school and high school, so he couldn't even watch Tony Stark being beaten. It's really a weekend surprise. Ronan sighed. The police around the school shouted for the people to hurry to a safe location. The people around seemed to be crazy and far away from the black hole, and the sound of sirens seemed to remind them. It's time to take refuge. Should we say that this is the daily life of Marvel World's people? Ronan silently rose, quickly bypassed the running crowd and turned into a quiet alley. He gently lifted his foot and a golden portal appeared out of thin air. At the other end of the portal is the Temple of New York. As Ronan stepped into the portal, the golden sparks quickly disappeared. Just then, not far away from the trash can, a familiar face from Ronan appeared. Peter Parker. What the F***CK? The Temple of New York. Ronan's leap instantly landed on the rooftop of the temple in New York. At this moment, Gui was standing on the rooftop, playing a small game called Eliminating Cheetah People. Throwing a Grigado ring casually, a Cheetah flying soldier fell. It seems to have a good feel. Teacher. Ronan threw down his backpack and joined this small game. Because in his eyes, these adorable Cheetah cavalry are all experience. I have to admit, games like this are really the favorite of mages. After all, the New York Temple is protected by the phalanx, and these Cheetah people cannot see their existence at all. So, Ronan and his team basically attacked them without any damage. Just be careful of the falling fragments. Teacher, won't you go help them? Ronan threw out the magic ring in his hand and glanced at his own system. Experience plus 50 experience plus 50 blood earned. Ronan's face lit up with joy. It seems that upgrading to level 5 today is inevitable. According to the system, whenever it reaches a level of 5, or a multiple of 5, the system will randomly issue a skill from another world. Ronan has been looking forward to this skill for a long time. No need, whether we participate in the battle or not has little impact on the overall situation. They can solve this disaster. Gui shook his head. As the guardian of the Earth, Kamataja's mission is to protect the Earth from external invasion. But this time, Koichi chose to stand idly by. Is it the so-called fate? Ronan smiled. To some extent, he is just like Gui today. Everyone knows clearly what will happen in the future and how those superheroes will end up. However, Koichi shook his head and stopped his movements at the same time. Someone has arrived. Speaking, Gui turned his gaze to the other side of the rooftop. A green figure over 2 meters high leaped from the sky and landed on the rooftop. Ronan can clearly feel the vibration on the rooftop. Hulk. No, to be precise, it's the new version of Hulk completed by the fusion of Hulk and Bruce Banner. Ronan opened his mouth, as if he had guessed something. Bruce Banner looked at the door leading downstairs and reached out to open it. Be careful when walking from there. After all, the floor has just been waxed. At this moment, Koichi interrupted Bruce Banner's movements. Bruce Banner, who heard the sound, glanced over and saw both Gui and Ronan. He glanced at Ronan, his face seeming somewhat puzzled. I'm looking for Dr. Strange. When Bruce Banner said these words, Ronan couldn't help but roll his eyes. Damn parallel spacetime theory. No, it's not right either. More precisely, this should be the present and the future. At least at this moment, it can still be called the present and the future. Because soon after, because the future Tony Stark lost the space gem, also known as the cosmic Rubik's Cube, Loki used it to escape. Invisibly established another parallel universe. The fixed future of this world should be when Loki took the space gem with him during the destruction of Asgard. Until Fu Lien 4, he took out a gem to sneak attack Mia-Ba, but was pinched to death by Mia-Ba. The parallel universe created is Loki, who was captured by the Space Administration. That is to say, from the moment Loki takes the cosmic cube, Ronan will enter a brand new parallel universe. You came about 5 years earlier. And now Doctor Strange is undergoing surgery 20 blocks away. Gui glanced to the left and pointed to that position. Then, he looked again at Bruce Banner. What are you looking for him for? There was no surprise on Gui's face. On the side, Ronan couldn't help but want to laugh. Actually, Gui knows everything, but he doesn't say anything. Just for that. Bruce Banner pointed to the eye of the Ago motorcycle worn by Koichi. Gui shook his head and smiled, I'm afraid that won't work. After all, this is a gemstone of time, even if Koichi knows their purpose, there are still some things to say. At least from a timeline perspective, that's the case. Sorry, I didn't plan to discuss it either. Speaking, Bruce Banner moved his neck and took 2 steps forward. But when he took the second step, the sudden sense of weightlessness made him fall directly. The next second, a portal appeared again in the sky. Bruce Banner's figure fell from the sky and happened to fall into the portal on the ground. So repeated. Gui looked at Bruce Banner, who was constantly screaming and disappearing, appearing, and falling in front of him, and a faint smile appeared on his face. She turned her head and looked at Ronan, whose face was full of harmless people and animals. It seems that you are very proficient in using the secret method gate. Especially when I saw Ronan's empty fingers, the smile on his face became even stronger. You can use the secret door without wearing a hanging ring or using gestures, and Ronan is still the first of the entire Kamar-Taj. I just feel like he's a bit arrogant. After all, in our territory, being so arrogant is not a good thing. Ronan shrugged, he was consciously changing the direction of the future. Since the arrival of Bruce Banner and his team will make this world a brand new parallel universe. So he wants to give it a try. If there are more changes, will there still be a different situation? He is looking forward to it. Alright, I know his purpose and purpose. Let him out. Gui smiled and shook her head, as if she could see something. Ronan pursed his lips, and Bruce Banner, who had been constantly falling, landed on the rooftop with a loud bang. The rooftop once again shook. Ah! Damn it! Bruce Banner covered his head, his stomach churning. Even if he is Hulk, it is still the first time he has encountered such a situation. Who is this little ghost? Bruce Banner looked at Ronan with great fear. After all, it was this young man who gave him a new version of the ship he had never experienced before. Koichi slowly walked forward, with a smile rising again from the corner of his mouth. He is the next Supreme Mage. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Face to Face NTR. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Face to Face NTR. This sentence from Gui left both Bruce Banner and Ronan with question marks on their faces. The next Supreme Mage. Isn't that Stephen Strange? How do I remember that the next Supreme Mage was Doctor Strange? Bruce Banner murmured to himself, but he quickly shook his head and took another step forward. That has nothing to do with me, my goal is only that stone. As he spoke, he made a snatching gesture. You will regret it. Just as Guy finished speaking, Bruce Banner's right hand was approaching Guy. However, bang. Gui slapped Bruce Banner in the abdomen, and his human body was directly knocked out. Woohoo! Ronan blew a whistle on the side with a lively expression. Watching movies is mostly in 3D or 4D, so there is no comfort in watching live broadcasts. He took a step forward and his figure instantly came behind the large Bruce Banner, resisting his impending collapse. Uncle, it's time for you to lose weight. Ronan looked at the soul of Bruce Banner beside him and couldn't help roast. After speaking, he lightly bumped, and the large Bruce Banner gently landed on the side recliner. Along with it came a hat that covered his face. And Bruce Banner, on the other hand, was in a state of confusion. Ronan, I think you can go help them. But don't reveal your background. Gooey looked at Ronan, who was like a melon-eating crowd, and said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Ronan couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Is it difficult for me, the future Supreme Mage, to hear these words? However, he didn't say much. He has already heard everything he needs to hear, so it's better to go to the front line and gain some experience. Thinking of this, a portal appeared behind Ronan. Goodbye. Ronan waved to Bruce Banner's soul, lightly jumped back, and the person disappeared on the rooftop. Watching Ronan leave, Gooey then turned his gaze to Bruce Banner. Let's start from scratch, okay? On the other side. The battlefield has entered a state of intense heat. As another Bruce Banner rode a small motorcycle to the battlefield and completed his transformation, the giant creature from Chirita was also shattered by his punch. The familiar BGM seemed to ring off as if there were none. The Chirita people around all looked towards this side and shouted angrily at a few people. And the first members of the Avengers also gathered together and set their respective positions. Especially Hulk, he yelled at these Chirita people twice. 6 people formed a circle, all with resolute expressions on their faces. The war seems to be on the verge of breaking out. ZZZZ. In such a tense atmosphere, a golden spark flickered in the air. Soon, something resembling a circle appeared in front of them. A human about 1.8 meters tall stepped out of this circle. On his head, he actually wore a helmet of the same style as Iron Man. Without a doubt, this person is Ronan. I'm sorry. Did I bother you with your styling? Ronan looked at the few people in front of him who were on high alert, as if he understood something. The first generation reunited and assembled. When BGM rings, how many people must shout, Yi Qing Hui? Who are you? The person who raised this question is naturally Tony Stark. After all, Ronan wore a Iron Man helmet on his head to cover up his identity. This is a blatant infringement. Good question. Perhaps, I'm just a ninja who wants to become the Hokage. Or, is it a man who wants to become the One Piece King? Ronan shrugged his shoulders, allowing anyone to hear such a perfunctory answer. Seeing several people focusing their attention on themselves, Ronan cleared his throat with a strong sense of settling in before resisting the outside. Cough cough. I just want to help, there's nothing else. Ronan's explanation made Hammer God roll his eyes uncontrollably. Brother, why did you go earlier? His words were also something that several others wanted to ask. After all, with that eerie scene just now, I always feel that this person's strength should be quite strong. In class. Ronan used a rhetorical question. But soon, Steve Rogers interrupted several people's conversations. Shall we first deal with these aliens? As he spoke, he also turned his gaze to these Chirita people. Even he knows that it is wrong to prioritize internal stability when fighting against foreign aggression. After all, their advantage does not lie with them. A few people remained silent and looked around. Ronan moved his muscles and bones and stretched lazily. Jarvis, turn on the system. With Ronan's words, the Iron Man helmet on his head made a sound, and the position of his eyes also shone. Hello, I'm Jarvis. Jarvis's electronic synthesizer also sounded. It's almost the same as the real Gia's thinking. Walter. On the side, Tony Stark tilted his head and opened his mouth, seemingly incredulous. Jarvis, attack status. ZZZZ. As Ronan changed his password, the sound effect of 50 cents rang out again. The position of the helmet's eyes also turned red in combat mode. Woohoo, let's start. Ronan let out a strange cry and the person rushed out. Steve Rogers looked at Ronan's back and turned to look at Tony Stark. Don't look at me, I don't have such junk sound effects. However, before he could finish speaking, a roar once again caught the attention of both of them. I saw a red energy whip in Luonan's hands. The energy whip on his right hand was thrown out, and a Chirita soldier who was rushing towards him was instantly bound. The next second, a magic formation appeared in Ronan's left hand, bouncing a laser bullet out. Boom! The energy whip smashed the Chirita soldier onto a nearby building, and the bounced laser bullet also shot into the brain of another Chirita person. His move attracted Chirita people from around to surround him. Watching, Ronan was about to fall into the encirclement. However, Ronan showed no signs of panic. With a gentle flick, the energy whip in his right hand disappeared, replaced by a ring of Lagador. Next, please enjoy the Lotus of Death from Ms. Carter. After speaking, Ronan's body began to spin rapidly. As he rotated, he threw out one after another the magic rings of his hands. Boom! Boom! A series of explosions rang out, with Ronan as the center, and all the Chirita people around were mercilessly attacked by the Dharma ring. Experience plus 50, experience plus 50, experience plus 50. Looking at the rapidly growing experience, Ronan's eyes became brighter and brighter. Finally the system sounded an extremely beautiful prompt sound. Experience value is full, the host will automatically upgrade to level 5. Skill points plus 1. The skill, Seeing, Hearing, Colorful Dominance, has been issued. Woohoo! When he heard the sound of the system prompt, Ronan's excitement was beyond words. He even wants to roar into the sky. However, he quickly suppressed his excited expression. But the magic ring in his hand is thrown faster than before. This is one experience after another. With the continuous sound of explosions, the screams were also incessant. This time, it was not a human scream, but a Chirita scream. Standing in place, Steve Rogers quickly extended his shield, blocking a magic ring that accidentally flew towards him, and once again turned his gaze to Tony Stark beside him. His gaze is self-evident. What were you trying to say earlier? Tony Stark tugged at the corner of his mouth, glanced at the energy cannon in his palm, and awkwardly tilted his head. Jarvis, in combat mode. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. 2 Iron Men. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. 2 Iron Men. New York Temple, rooftop. Sorry, I can't help you with this favor. If I give you the Stone of Time to save your reality, then our reality will be in danger. On the rooftop of the temple in New York, Gui refused Bruce Banner's request. Although she already knows everything, she still has to follow the script. In a way, Koichi is not only the most powerful mage, but also a top-notch actor. At least the expression on her face convinced Bruce Banner. No, scientific theories are not like that. Bruce Banner quickly said. After all, he can't beat Gui, so he can only rely on his mouth to escape. However, Gui glanced at him and gently pushed his right hand backwards, revealing a shining line on the rooftop. The infinite stone creates the time flow you see. Missing one gem means diversion. As he spoke, Koichi's right hand bounced off a gemstone and a black line appeared on the string. This may be helpful for your reality, but my situation here is completely different. In this new branch of reality, the main force against darkness has been lost. Our world will be in imminent danger. So tell me, Bruce, can your scientific theory prevent all of this from happening? Gui looked at Bruce Banner in front of him and his tone seemed very stern. Her statement is correct. Without a gem, it represents the emergence of a new time flow, which is a brand new parallel universe. The entire universe will also experience a new turning point. Bruce Banner pondered slightly, but soon gave the answer. No, I can't stop it, but I can eliminate all of this. As long as we use up the gemstones and return them to their original owners at the origin of time, from a temporal and spatial perspective, these gemstones have never left. As he spoke, Bruce Banner also learned from Guy, grabbing the gem that had just been bounced off by Guy from the air and putting it back into the time flow it formed. The black time stream that was just separated, visible to the naked eye, slowly disappears. Seeing the changes happening in front of him, Koichi seemed somewhat surprised. However, she slowly turned around and walked to the edge of the rooftop. But you seem to have forgotten the most important thing. To return these gemstones to us, you must survive. Gu-Yi looked at Bruce Banner and asked the most important question. Once they die, these gemstones will not return to this world, and everything will rest. We will, I can guarantee it. Bruce Banner quickly said. However, Koichi shook his head. I cannot take such a risk just because of one of your promises. The duty of the Supreme Master is to protect the time jewel well. Gu-Yi's words made Bruce Banner a little impatient. Why did Strange hand it over? He too, speaking of which, Bruce Banner seems to have thought of something. He is at least the supreme mage of our world. Because he vividly remembers that not long ago, the young man beside Gu-Yi was referred to as the next supreme mage by Gu-Yi. This also means that this world seems completely different from theirs. What are you saying? Did Strange hand over the gemstones? Your world, timeline, speaking of which, Gu-Yi seemed to suddenly realize something, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. No one knew that the surprise she was showing at this moment was entirely due to her true emotions. She seemed to suddenly understand everything. That's right, the supreme mage in our world is not the child just now, but Dr. Strange who underwent surgery just 20 blocks away. He handed over the gemstones. Bruce Banner scratched his head, as if things were completely out of his control. Here, not only is he unable to obtain the time stone, but even the Supreme Master has changed. He suddenly had an ominous premonition about this matter. I see. If we follow the normal, Gu-Yi murmured to herself, gently caressing the eyes of a Go motorcycle, but a smile appeared on her face. She took a deep breath and slowly walked towards Bruce Banner. I have a brand new proposal, would you like to listen to it? On the other side. The battlefield has finally come to an end. After repeated wrestling by Hulk, Loki finally reached the pinnacle of his life. Staring at by members of 6 Avengers at the same time. Oh no, I should say it's 7. And outside their window, there is also an Iron Man watching them. Captain, hurry up, they're already finishing up. As he spoke, the Iron Man entered the Stark building and quietly touched a few people next to him. At this time, the first generation of Avengers were in a friendly exchange with Loki. Looking at these familiar faces from his youth, Tony Stark couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Mr. Rogers, I almost forgot about your clothes. The effect of lifting the buttocks is simply unbearable to look at directly. Tony Stark watched as Captain America walked and whispered in his headphones. On the other side of the headphones, there is also Steve Rogers from the future. The two of them laughed and joked, and the Ant-Man Scott Lang standing on Tony Stark's shoulder seemed to have noticed a blind spot. Hey wait, Mr. Stark, who's that person wearing your mask? How come there are 2 Iron Men here? Is that your brother? Scott Lang discovered Ronan. At this time, Ronan still wore the mask of Iron Man and was dressed in casual clothes. I don't have any brothers. I don't know either. Wait, why is he walking this way? Tony Stark was suddenly shocked. However, before he could change his position, the young man wearing a mask unexpectedly appeared in front of them. Subconsciously, Tony Stark is about to transform. No. Ronan extended his index finger and shook it. Wow, is there another surprise for the weekend? Ronan looked at them with a smile as if he didn't know anything. But Tony Stark and Scott Lang were stunned in place. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. "Tony, how are you doing over there?" "I'm ready now." The sound of Steve Rogers came from the earphones. Tony Stark gently touched his earphones and answered awkwardly, "Well, there seems to be a small problem with us here. However, he still doesn't know how to explain the current situation. "Don't be nervous, Mr. Stark." "Oh, should I say, Mr. Stark from the future?" Ronan's voice sounded, but there seemed to be a little bit of cunning in it. I saw him take out his phone from his pocket and silently turn on the recording mode. "There is a Stark here, and there is also a Stark there. This picture is like 3 insects in the same frame, okay?" Ronan was recording a video while muttering incessantly. Although they don't understand what 3 insects in one frame means, Tony Stark too knows that if they don't take some action, their plan may really be ruined. So, Iron Man 2 is activated. As Tony Stark too lightly tapped his chest, the nano Iron Man suit covered his body. "Wow, cool." Ronan gave a very exaggerated thumbs up, but this tone made Tony Stark too in front of him increasingly uncomfortable. How does it feel like it's not like praising him? "Hey! What are you doing?" However, before Tony Stark too could make a move in front of him, a voice that he was extremely familiar with rang out from behind Ronan. The number 1 entity belonging to this world surprisingly walked behind Ronan. The hand that wanted to be placed on Ronan's shoulder suddenly froze in the air. Woohoo! Ronan quietly took 2 steps back, allowing the phone screen to cover both of them perfectly. The expressions on the faces of the 2 people can be said to be incredibly wonderful. Number 2, who has just completed her transformation, only has 2 big characters written on her face, which is awkward. And the first person who just walked over showed the same expression as when he saw Ronan transform before. What the F***CK? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. I Persuaded Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. I Persuaded Me. The sentence from Tony Stark 1 was clearly meant for Ronan to hear. He never imagined that one day he could see a man who looked exactly like himself, wearing similar steel battle clothes, and staring at each other face to face with himself. More importantly, the counterfeit in front of me seems to have a bit more maturity than myself. What kind of ghost is this? If I were to tell you, this is the android Tony Stark I hired to create, and then I developed a brand new set of armor myself. The brand new armor is equipped with the latest technology. Oh, the future of nanotechnology has more advanced capabilities and combat effectiveness. I will call it Mark 85 Nano Armor 2.0, a very powerful and outstanding one. Ronan seemed to have found some kind of fun and started talking incessantly about the steel battle suit on Tony Stark too. However, it seems that the other party did not understand his kindness. Shut up. Shut up. The 2 Tonistacks spoke almost at the same time, both in tone and voice. They all thought to themselves, what should we do? Another is thinking about who this is and who this is. It's clear that Rocky has been caught. Why are there people who are just like him? Is it difficult to be Rocky's accomplice? Thinking of this, Tony Stark 1 gently lifted his right hand, and Ronan saw the bracelet on his right hand. Yo! Is war about to start? Ronan's eyes became increasingly bright, and his camera was even focused on the upcoming transformation of Tony Stark 1. He has even figured out the title of this video in his mind. Iron Man vs. Iron Man. Isn't this much higher than the rating of Bat Wars Red Panties? Vit. I know you want to transform, the bracelet on your right hand is the remote control for Mark 7. And I know everything about you, and I also know what you want to do next. Tony Stark too quickly blocked the action of 1. This kind of self-blocking shot feels a bit comical no matter how you look at it. However, Upon hearing these words, Tony Stark #1 tilted his head and seemed to have some hesitation on his face. Upon seeing this, #2 immediately pursued the victory. I also know that Mark 7 still has some issues and is not yet in use. If you transform again, at least you are already lacking in energy and power, and Jarvis should have told you already, I am you. #2 raised an eyebrow towards #1, and in order to show sincerity, he even lifted his steel armor. At the moment when he saw his armor lifted, the doubt on Tony Stark 1's face became even more intense. This battle suit only exists in his imagination. To be precise, it should be that even the folder has not been created yet. Tony, are you okay? We're going down now. Just then, the voice of Steve Rogers came from not far away. The originally relaxed atmosphere suddenly became tense. Even Ronan, with great interest, aimed the camera at the other side. He not only has no sense of nervousness now, but also a bit of excitement. As for the future. Will the timeline change? Ronan doesn't care at all. Anyway, Koichi didn't stop him, which means everything Ronan did was reasonable and legal. At least in his opinion, doing so is completely fine. It's over, you've been exposed. Shouldn't we slip away now? Scott Lang, who had been hiding on the shoulder of Tony Stark 2, finally showed his head. You know, he was also scared by the scene just now. Now they only have two choices. Either fight or run. The former is afraid that they will have to face the members of the entire Avengers Alliance, while the latter will make their purpose of this trip fail. No matter how you look at it, their plan is probably going to fall through. However, Tony Stark 2 did not speak, just looked at the other self with his eyes. Do you choose to believe in yourself? More precisely, believe in one's own intelligence. Ronan stared at these two people with great interest, and this feeling should not be too pleasant. I saw Tony Stark 1 take a heavy glance at #2, then slowly turn around and say, "It's okay, Captain. You guys go down first, I'll take the Rubik's Cube with me later. I need to find a safe way to return the Rubik's Cube to the Divine Shield Bureau." Steve Rogers frowned, but in the end he didn't say much. Although he didn't know what Tony Stark was doing, he still chose to believe him. At least for now, the relationship between the two is still quite good. Okay, I'll wait for you downstairs. After speaking, Steve Rogers glanced at Tony Stark and then turned his gaze to Ronan. Although I don't know who you are, I still appreciate you. Steve Rogers pointed to Ronan and nodded solemnly. Ronan clenched his right hand and hammered the left chest, then also pointed to Steve Rogers. Appearing like, we are good brothers. After finishing all of this, Steve Rogers took the elevator and walked downstairs. The atmosphere solidified once again. Okay, who are you? Or rather, are you really me? Watching Steve Rogers walk into the elevator, Tony Stark 1 spoke up and asked. Tony on the second was about to answer, but suddenly something came to his mind. Sorry, I can't tell you anything about this. I should know the truth of the so-called paradox of time and space, so there are many things I cannot tell you. What I can tell you is that there are things I have to do when I come here. Tony Stark took a deep breath and could only explain many things this way. After all, once Tony #1 knows too much, there may be significant changes in the future. The paradox of time and space. Do you just want to convince me with this statement? Tony #1 frowned, which was not a good reason. However, this is also the most thing Tony 2 can say. So, this presents a particularly strange phenomenon. This reason is very accurate and intuitive. But this reason, on the one hand, cannot convince #1, and on the other hand, it also makes #2 hesitant to say more. Now, the two people are almost looking at each other. On the side, Luo Nan had no intention of helping to explain, only focused on recording the video. He is just an ordinary melon-eating crowd. No one would even believe such a perfunctory reason, would they? So I said before that I was a ninja who wanted to become Hokage, wouldn't you believe me too? Oh, he's still a little skilled at archery. As soon as he finished speaking, Tony Stark number 2 gave Ronan a fierce glare. He also doesn't know who the person in front of him wearing the Iron Man helmet is. If it weren't for him, he wouldn't have been discovered, and the subsequent series of nonsense wouldn't have happened. So, he really wants to compete with real Ronan. However, the current situation does not allow it. Guys, I found Loki's accomplice. He disguised himself as me, holding a scepter in his hand. At that moment, the voice of Steve Rogers came from the headphones of Tony Stark 1. At the same time, the classic line, "Guys, I've been discovered," also came from the earphones of number 2. Although the sound in the earphones is not loud, it is still clear enough for a few people to hear in this quiet space. Has he also come? Tony Stark raised an eyebrow. Number 2 opened his mouth and could only nod helplessly in the end. Yes, that. The United States has a crooked buttocks. I saw Tony Stark 1 take a deep breath and then vomit heavily. Excited heart, trembling hands. He turned around unexpectedly. Whatever you do, I'll treat you as if I've never seen you before. After speaking, Tony Stark took 2 steps but quickly stopped. He turned his head, but this time he turned his gaze to Ronan. That. He reached out his hand, pointed to Ronan, and then pointed to his own face. Next time we meet, can we change the helmet to a different sound effect? Alternatively, it could be a different one. Jarvis. After saying these words, Tony Stark number 1 awkwardly withdrew his hand, nodded towards Ronan, and turned to leave. And Ronan stood still, shrugging his shoulders. The show is over. He gently lifted his right foot and a portal appeared in front of him. He glanced at Tony Stark 2 and smiled slightly at the corner of his mouth. Okay, to commemorate this day, next time my artificial intelligence will be called Friday. How about it? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Destiny. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Destiny. After saying these words, Ronan waved at the still-stunned Tony Stark 2 and turned around to step into the portal. The portal closed and Ronan's figure disappeared. However, Tony Stark was still immersed in what had just happened and couldn't extricate himself. Hey! Tony, they have all gone down. We need to continue to complete our plan. At this moment, Scott Lang's voice pulled him out of his skeptical expression about life. At this moment, he was hiding in Tony number 1's hair. Friday. Did he just say Friday? Tony Stark looked as if he had seen a ghost. Friday is his second artificial intelligence development and his current helper. Since Jarvis merged with Vision and became a true human, Friday replaced Jarvis in his position. However, the young man just now actually called out Friday's name. This makes it difficult for Tony Stark to believe that it is a coincidence. Don't think about those things for now. Our mission is to obtain the Cosmic Cube. Now they are all about to leave. Scott Lang is clearly the only person who is still sober. After all, one is arguing with their own passion, while the other suspects that life cannot extricate itself. So, only he is still relatively sober. Upon hearing these words, Tony Stark, who had been immersed in shock, took a deep breath and buried this doubt in his heart. Captain, how are you doing on your end? Tony Stark touched his headphones and asked in a low voice. I've taken care of it myself. What about your side? The sound of Steve Rogers panting came from the earphones. Obviously, something very physically demanding must have happened between the two just now. We're ready. Let's get started with the plan. The first floor of Stark Building. At this point, many people had already stood on the first floor. In addition to the Black Widow, there are also several people responsible for handover in the Divine Shield Bureau. The leader is Alexander Pierce, the former director of the Divine Shield Bureau, the spiritual mentor of the current director Nick Fury, and the underground leader of the Divine Shield Bureau branch of the Hydra Society. Standing not far away, Ronan was wearing a black suit, with black sunglasses covering most of his face. It looks like a special agent from the Divine Shield Bureau. However, the faint smile at the corner of his mouth betrayed him. A senior executive from the Nine-Headed Snake became the spiritual mentor of the director of the Divine Shield Bureau. It's funny to think about this. Especially now, Fu Lien and others still have to hand over 2 infinite raw stones to them. It feels interesting to think about it. However, no matter what, Ronan has already turned on the camera mode. Although Tony Stark too knows everything, he still doesn't know the number 1 that is about to hand over to Alexander Pierce. He was looking forward to it very much. One day, when Tony Stark number 1 found out about the other person's true face, he would bring out the video and see what Tony number 1's expression was. Thinking about it makes people feel excited. Thinking of this, Ronan lightly glanced at a security guard who was looking left and right. There is no doubt that person is Tony Stark number 2 pretending. Sure enough, jumping directly from the rooftop is obviously much faster than taking the elevator down. Cough cough. As he approached Ronan, he suddenly heard 2 coughs. The sound startled Tony Stark. The typical appearance of being a thief with a guilty heart almost made Ronan feel nervous. At this moment, the elevator lit up again, and Tony Stark 1, who had been waiting for a long time, finally arrived. Scott, the target has already appeared. It's up to you now. Tony Stark 2, who pretended to be a security guard, muttered to himself. In a place that no one could see, Scott Lang followed Tony Stark's clothes and directly penetrated into the reactor on his chest. At this point, Tony Stark 1 had been stopped by Alexander Pierce. The good play is about to unfold. Just as a few people were arguing, Scott Lang completed his task. The sudden power outage made Tony Stark 1 twitch all over, and the box in his hand fell to the ground. This sudden problem made everyone extremely panicked. Only Loki, standing still, saw the box on the ground flying in another direction. Tony Stark 2 quickly stepped forward, picked up the boxes on the ground, and prepared to evacuate. Ronan on the side had no intention of stopping. Actually, from the beginning, he didn't want to stop Tony number 2 from taking the box. He really wants to see if Tony Stark would have been different from the original plot if he hadn't seen his father and heard Howard Stark's words. At the end of Double 4, Tony Stark snapped his fingers with his own life and exchanged everyone's lives. According to the personality of Tony Stark's daughter Slave, this kind of thing is basically impossible to happen. The only thing that had an impact on him was the trip to New Jersey in 1970. Similarly, that action also inspired Steve Rogers to retire and spend the rest of his life with Peggy Carter. What would have happened if all of this had not happened? So, Ronan chose to stand idly by. However, something unexpected happened to Ronan. Hulk, who had already walked down the stairs and even ran out of Stark Tower, unexpectedly broke through the window and entered at this moment. The building damage he kicked away hit the chest of Tony Stark too. Bang! Hulk feels very noisy. With a roar from Hulk, the box curved in mid-air and then landed heavily. The cosmic cube, shining with a faint blue light, coincidentally landed at Loki's feet. Seeing such a scene, Ronan's eyes narrowed. The will of the universe. Or something else. Or, is this another simple coincidence? He glanced at the ceiling, his gaze seeming to penetrate the building and gaze into the sky. However, he did not hesitate, and a small teleportation array suddenly appeared on his right hand. Not far away, Loki has picked up the cosmic cube. He never expected that at this moment, there was a hand quietly placed on his shoulder. Schwa. With the swirling scene before him, Ronan was taken to a desert by Loki. Loki also landed. Who are you? Obviously, at the first moment of landing, Loki discovered Ronan. Ronan did not immediately answer him, but glanced at the surrounding environment. If he guesses correctly, in a while, those who claim to be the Time Management Bureau will appear, right? As expected, before Loki could ask her second question, a portal appeared in front of the two of them. A few people dressed like special police officers walked out of the portal. Ronan couldn't help but tug at the corner of his mouth. These clothes are really ugly. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Time Management Bureau. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Time Management Bureau. Who are you? When the second wave of people appeared, a hint of dissatisfaction flashed across Loki's face. Because he could clearly see that the few people who had just appeared didn't even bother him. Instead, he took out an instrument similar to a mobile phone and aimed it at Loki and Ronan. Ronan watched all of this with great interest. He also wants to know what reaction the machine in front of him would have if tested. Time violation, Loki, identity confirmation. The female captain glanced at Loki, said these words, and then turned her head to look at Ronan. The machine in his hand was also aimed at Ronan. Dee-dee-dee-dee, to the surprise of the female captain, the machine in her hand made a crisp beep sound. More importantly, the screen that just detected Loki's detailed identity only left 4 words at this moment. Unable to detect. What kind of person are you? The female captain put down the machine in her hand and her expression suddenly became alert. According to the orders they received, there will be a time criminal here who will be ordered to come and arrest. Although they confirmed the identity of the time criminal, they did not expect to have another witness. Who is this eyewitness? How to say it? I'm actually a director. Speaking, Ronan took out his hidden phone with a helpless expression on his face. The camera is focused on Loki and the female captain. The female captain was clearly caught off guard by this answer. She had thought of countless other people's names, but she never expected them to answer like that. Hey, it's your turn. According to the script, now you should ask me what dreams I have. Looking at the unmoved female captain, Ronan couldn't help but remind. However, Rocky on the side could no longer resist. He considers himself a god, but is repeatedly ignored on Earth. Especially this time, he surprisingly lost to a few Earthlings. This can be considered a great shame. That's enough. How dare you ignore me, Asgard's god of trickery? I carry a glorious mission, However, the female captain doesn't want to hear Loki continue to boast. Obviously, the anger received from Ronan was seamlessly connected by Loki. On behalf of the Time Management Bureau, I arrest you on charges of violating the sacred timeline. Raise your hand and follow us. As soon as the words fell, several soldiers next to the female captain pulled the bolt of the gun. Ronan couldn't help but roll his eyes. If he had to say it, the Time Management Bureau's pressure is really not good. I can manage time now, but there is actually such a weapon for catching people. You're already called the Time Management Bureau, otherwise you'll just have some flashy skills that will shock people at first sight. You'll just stand still and be taken away obediently. Otherwise, just expressionlessly reveal some of Loki's little secrets and suppress him. No matter how you look at it, the people at the Time Management Bureau in front of you are all low and explosive. No wonder she was singled out by the female Loki. This day is really enough. I've had enough of you fully armed idiots. The action of several people pulling the bolt clearly reminded Loki of the scene of being surrounded by several people from the Alliance. At that time, he was lying on the ground, weak, pitiful, and helpless. Especially on the other side, there is a green giant who can treat him like a toy, even if he throws it around randomly. The phrase, puny god, can be considered as killing the heart. I'll give you a final warning, get out of my way. As the god of Asgard, I won't fall twice in one place. Loki, with an unpleasant expression, took 2 steps forward and wanted to take the cosmic cube that had fallen to the ground. However, the female captain remained calm and swung her right hand suddenly, accurately hitting Loki's right face with the stick in her hand. At that moment, Ronan clearly saw that there had been a great change in Loki's own time. This change only applies to Loki and has no effect on either Ronan or the female captain. The shaking marks on Loki's face after being hit are visible to the naked eye. The female captain walked forward and placed something resembling a collar around Loki's neck. I hope you can learn something from this fall. Oh, of course, please hurry up too. After she finished speaking, the time on Loki also returned to normal. Bang! Loki rolled down to the ground once again. The two soldiers from the Time Management Bureau behind them walked forward and firmly held Loki up. The cosmic cube was also held by one of the soldiers. Wait a minute. At this moment, Ronan spoke out. Several people simultaneously turned their gaze to Ronan, and their weapons were also aimed at him. You can't take that thing with you. My task is to reclaim the space gemstones in your hands. Ronan pointed to the cosmic cube, which was also the purpose of his trip. As the current Supreme Mage, Koichi possesses a time gemstone as a decoration, so it is reasonable for him, the next Supreme Mage, to possess a space gemstone, right? It's better for this stone to fall into his hands than to fall into the hands of others. Well, he definitely didn't want this stone. Sorry, this space gemstone is also within our storage range. Moreover, these memories should not exist. However, before the female captain could finish speaking, she heard a bang. The voice came from behind her. She quickly turned her head, only to find that Ronan punched the female soldier in the chest, and the female soldier immediately flew out. And that space gem also fell into Ronan's hands. There's a lot of nonsense, but I don't have time to talk to you guys. Speaking, Ronan threw away the cosmic cube in his hand. Well, it feels good to the touch. He's talking about the Rubik's Cube. Damn it. Let's take action together and eliminate him. The female team leader cursed and immediately issued the order to open fire. The remaining soldiers pulled the trigger in front of their fingers and fired wildly at Ronan. A large number of bullets poured out in an instant. Hey, your appearance makes me feel more like a villain character. I'm just a high school student. Ronan sighed and saw him cross his hands and move his muscles and bones. The sound of cracking bones merged with the sound of bullets. Bang! 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 A series of bullets bombarded Ronan, forming an extremely dense firepower network. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably die and cannot die anymore. However, Ronan is completely different. In this forest of bullets, he would sometimes put out a C, sometimes a 1, and sometimes a wooden character. In short, he managed to dodge all the bullets. The dodged bullets hit the desert, raising a gust of sand and dust that instantly blocked Ronan's sight. Taking this opportunity, the female captain flew forward and with a stick-like weapon in her right hand, fiercely hit Ronan's face. As long as he is hit by this stick, Ronan is bound to pop. Next second, a scene that shocked the female captain occurred. Ronan, surprisingly grabbed the female captain's stick with his hand. Yes, it's that stick-like weapon. How could it be? The female captain instinctively exclaimed in surprise. How could it not be possible? Have you never heard of an ability that can evade all attacks from the heavens? Have you ever heard of the domineering appearance of seeing and hearing? Ronan's face was full of helplessness, but this did not prevent him from exerting his right hand and gradually breaking the stick away from him. Also, according to the rules of the martial arts world, hitting someone doesn't mean hitting their face. After all, my face has a strong sense of empathy. However, the female captain was foolish. Why was he not attacked by time? Before she could figure out why, she felt a strong attack and then lost control of the weapon. Looking at the aggrieved, unwilling, and shocked expression on the face of the female team leader, Ronan couldn't help but sigh. Why does your expression make me feel more and more like a villain? As the next Supreme Mage, I am a reliable and positive character. A person like me with thick eyebrows and big eyes will not easily betray the organization's cultivation. Ronan glanced at the stick in his hand and casually threw it to the ground. Seeing her proud weapon being thrown away so casually, the female captain also showed an angry expression. I know you're in a hurry, but don't worry for now. If I'm right, your so-called time attack is only useful for time criminals like him. The time managed by your management bureau is just a portion of the timeline. If there are people beyond the predetermined future, you will have the ability to deal with them. Speaking, Ronan pointed to Loki, who was still feeling dizzy. The meaning is very clear. This so-called weapon that can eliminate time crimes has no effect on him at all. The reason why it is useful for Loki is simply because the arrival of Tony Stark II and others accidentally changed Loki's predetermined future fate. Moreover, their power is probably very limited. Otherwise, whether it's Tony Stark one whom he has met in the future, or Steve Rogers one who has fought passionately with him in the future, they can also be considered as indirectly affecting the established timeline. Why didn't the Time Management Bureau catch them and reset the timeline? To put it simply, they are just an organization that bullies the weak and fears the hard. Otherwise, why not reset those protagonists? At the end of the day, they come out with both strength and background. As for the background of Loki, Asgard, it will soon be the twilight of the gods. During the time of Ronan's popularization, another portal slowly unfolded behind Ronan. A strong man with black skin walked out of the door. In an instant, the soldiers from the Management Bureau who had just been cold-faced seemed to have been cursed and turned into one string puppet after another. They opened the portal and turned inside with Loki. Ronan turned around and couldn't help but raise an eyebrow when he saw the person in front of him. Conqueror Kang. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Conquerors Kang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Conqueror Kang. I saw the famous Conqueror Kang Weiwei bowing slightly, with a kind smile on his face. It seems that humans and animals are harmless. However, Ronan is very cautious. When he watched dramas in his past life, he could be considered to have some understanding of the Conqueror Kang. The Conqueror Kang in the manga can be considered a very powerful existence, perhaps able to compete with the Destroyer 5 or even stronger. But the Conqueror Kang in that drama is pitifully weak. More precisely, it is a single-minded pursuit of death. Based on the current situation, this Kang should be the latter. Sorry, the future Supreme Mage. I apologize for my subordinate's actions. Conqueror Kang lowered his stance very low, as if he was truly apologizing for the previous incident. However, Ronan is even more vigilant. For the strength of Conqueror Kang, it has been mentioned in previous dramas. Just the ability to move instantly with that hand is already very tricky. As the mastermind behind the Time Management Bureau, his ability alone may not be enough. The famous Conqueror Kang, it seems that I underestimated the background of the Time Management Bureau. Ronan raised his head, indicating something very appropriately. First, say the other person's name, which means that Ronan knows him and understands him. Then, if we underestimate the Time Management Bureau, it means that Ronan doesn't know the specific situation. Although I don't know if I can deceive the other party, Ronan has to give it a try no matter what. Although I'm by that name, I'm afraid I'm not the one you know. Conqueror Kang smiled slightly, appearing very humble. So, does my appearance require you, the big shot behind the scenes, to eliminate these influences? Ronan remained calm. The more humble the other person was, the more he had to be vigilant. If a very strong person is arrogant, it is normal because the other person's strength is there. But if a very strong person is humble when facing others, either he is pretending, or he is truly humble. But no matter what kind, this kind of person is more difficult to deal with than the arrogant one. No, I'm just apologizing. In my memory, I have seen 3 supreme mages who have transcended the timeline. This is the ability of the Supreme Master. and it is also their responsibility. But you are different. Conqueror Kang slowly lifted his head and looked straight at Ronan. It seems like I want to see something from Ronan's eyes. Unfortunately, Ronan's sunglasses have not been taken off yet. What's different about me? Ronan's expression was somewhat strange. Did you see me as the protagonist so quickly? It should be said that he is truly the Conqueror Kang. Although you are the established Supreme Master on this timeline, you, who have not yet become the Supreme Master, have transcended this timeline. I can't see your past or your future from you. You are the most unique one. Conqueror Kang smiled, as if he hadn't seen Ronan's expression. Beyond this timeline. Ronan's expression moved. Why did he say, this timeline? Also, what does the so-called detachment mean? I know you have many questions to ask, but I don't know the answer either. What I said is only a part stored in my memory, but there is no relevant answer. Conqueror Kang shook his head, knowing what Ronan wanted to ask. So, your purpose here is to tell me these riddles. Ronan pursed his lips. This nigger doesn't look like good silver. This is clearly trying to destroy my Tao heart, damn it. No, I'm just here to apologize. Besides, I have a small request. Conqueror Kang slightly bowed, this time his posture was lower than before. Request. Tell me about it. Ronan did not refuse. Take a look at what can be accomplished and see if it benefits you. If it benefits you, do it, if it doesn't, don't do it. If it is something that cannot be accomplished, then whether or not to do it depends on oneself. Anyway, he didn't lose anything. If you see me again next time, please kill me. After speaking, Conqueror Kang bowed heavily to Ronan. Without waiting for Ronan to refuse, he was enveloped by the portal and disappeared in an instant. I wipe it. Watching the disappearing figure of Conqueror Kang, Ronan couldn't help but raise his middle finger. What does it mean? I just wanted to ruin my inner self, but now I want to rely on me to handle things for you. Is there no benefit to it? Isn't it because this nigger gave him benefits from others and took kickbacks on his own? However, no matter what, Ronan can only shrug his shoulders. Kill him next time we meet. Let's talk about it next time we meet. After speaking, a golden secret door appeared, and the destination was the familiar rooftop of the New York Temple. Ronan, who had successfully achieved his set goal, hummed a tune and returned to the rooftop of the temple in New York once again. Unlike in his memory, Bruce Banner not only did not leave, but the time stone was still hanging around Guy's neck. Intact and undamaged. Woohoo! Is it difficult to talk about breaking down? Ronan took off his sunglasses and looked at Bruce Banner with great interest. Bruce Banner had a worried expression on his face. Is it their own existence that makes Gui not believe the prophecy of any strange doctor? So not only did they not give the time gem to them, but they also treated Bruce Banner as a scammer. If that's really the case, then it would be interesting. Ronan, you have finally returned. When Ronan landed, Bruce Banner's worried expression finally changed. He quickly stepped forward and tightly grasped Ronan's hand, as if he had seen a family member. Ronan was somewhat surprised. Do you know my name? Ronan withdrew his hand without leaving a trace. Firstly, he is not non-tung. The second, Bruce Banner's hand is too strong and a bit numb. Can it be that what he did just now affected the timeline and made Bruce Banner suddenly think of himself? Or perhaps for some other reason. I told him that he doesn't know you. At least there are some things he doesn't know. Gui smiled slightly and walked up to Ronan, seemingly indicating something. So this is, Ronan doesn't even understand what's going to happen. Gui smiled and shook his head, reached out to take off the time gem, and then put it around Ronan's neck. Her action surprised Ronan very much. What does it mean? Is this to entrust an orphan? Has he become so excellent that Gui thinks he can take over? Or is it that Koichi has already figured it out and is ready to go with Bruce Banner to save the world over there? That's not right. Even if you want to go, you have to bring the time gem with you, right? What is it to give oneself the time gem? It won't be suddenly. Ronan seemed to have thought of something. Don't think too much, they came to borrow the time stone. I couldn't have agreed to them. After all, as the Supreme Master, one of our responsibilities is to safeguard the safety of the time stone. However, his world needs to be saved, and as the Supreme Mage, I must guard this earth. So Ronan. How about you go for me? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. I'm still developing, why don't you let me play the winning team? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. I'm still developing, why don't you let me play the winning team? Gu Yi looked at Luonan with a smile and said her ultimate goal. What? Ronan opened his mouth wide, and things unfolded in a direction he couldn't imagine. Although he had anticipated earlier, when Gu Yi said so, Luonan was also a bit confused. According to the normal storyline, isn't it that the Avengers borrowed the time jewel and engaged in a major battle against another world's destruction? Finally, Tony Stark too snapped the finger and eliminated the boss. Finally, Captain America returned all the gemstones to their rightful owners, and everything came to a successful conclusion. I'm afraid Gu Yi has watched these plots countless times, hasn't he? Why did you suddenly change the script? Isn't Gu Yi worried about any changes in the future timeline? Also, that kind of thing is about annihilating bullies. With his fragile physique and a level of up to 5, wouldn't it be like he was seeking his own death to face the destroyer? So, the frequency of Ronan shaking his head is like an electric fan. No, I still have homework to finish. Teacher, you know that if you can't finish your homework, the school will deduct credits. If I deduct credits, I won't be able to graduate. If I can't graduate, I'll be an out-of-school child. Out-of-school children. That would be too embarrassing for us Kamatage. Ronan instantly found a very reasonable excuse. The Bruce Banner people on the side seemed to have seen a ghost. Homework. Will the next Supreme Mage still have to do homework? It's okay, I'll take your leave from school and you don't have to worry about your homework. I believe they will ask for your help and also help you complete this small request, right? Koichi smiled and looked at Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner suddenly reacted and nodded quickly. No problem. I would rather do high school students' homework than save the world. Ronan opened his mouth, he really didn't want to go. What about being as stable as an old dog? He still has plenty of youth to spare. How could such a thing be decided so easily? Teacher, I actually have a very important matter to attend to. I talked about a girlfriend at school. She is fair-skinned, beautiful with long legs, and she also has a lot of money at home. You said that once I leave, I won't be able to keep my job for the rest of my life. Do you really have the heart? Ronan's eyes sparkled pitifully, and this appearance may not be loved by everyone, but most people with a bit of love can't help but want to touch his head. However, Koichi had no heart. Don't worry, you won't be in danger of your life. You should know that this is the necessary path for you to become the Supreme Master, so you must do so. Koichi still wore a smile and was not disturbed at all. No, you're lying. The script is clearly not written like this. Also, did you forget, teacher? Since I was 6 years old, you have said that you do not tell us what our future fate will be. Did your oath just break so easily? Trembling with cold air. When can these little mages stand up? Ronan, you have to remember. You are the most special and unique one among us. So, everything is at ease. Remember to communicate and exchange ideas with Strange, there's no need to rush back. After speaking, Gu Yi patted Luonan's shoulder, turned around, opened the door of the rooftop, and walked down. Her intention is very clear, not giving Ronan a chance to refuse. Ronan tugged at the corner of his mouth. You big shots, why do you always use one reason to deceive people? Conqueror Kang's words are okay, why do you say the same, teacher? Also, I vividly remember that you told Strange that he was the best among us. But what kind of bird did he end up like? In the mirrored space, the hammer is suspended by that little spider. Is this the best one? However, Ronan can only think about these roast in his heart after all. He really doesn't want to go. He hasn't developed yet, why should he start playing the winning team? Did you agree to let the double C develop for a while? Why did you rush up with the DF second consecutive order? This is unfair. Where is Master Chin Tian? Hurry up and come from Goose City, New York is not fair. Looking at Ronan's extremely complex expression, Bruce Banner hesitated and opened his mouth. Obviously, he didn't know what to say either. That. Ronan. Can we leave now? However, his words were exchanged for Ronan's cold and stern expression. Continuously trembling and cold. I'm just a high school student with homework. What does saving the world have to do with me? Teacher, can you change your mind? I think Wong is quite good. He is honest and has strong strength. How about you reconsider? I don't want this either. Ronan held the time gem in his hand and shouted downstairs at the top of his throat. However, his heartfelt cry did not receive any response. Standing aside, Bruce Banner tugged at the corners of his mouth. Why are you pinching so tightly when you don't want it? Are you afraid that I might steal something from your territory? However, in order to take the time gem away, Bruce Banner still had to persuade Ronan. After all, without a gem, their plan cannot be completed. Those lost comrades won't be able to come back. Thinking of this, there was also a hint of firmness in Bruce Banner's eyes. This is already their last resort. It's also their last chance. If they lose this opportunity, no one knows what their future will be like. They have been idle for 5 years. So far, they only need this last step. So, he must convince Ronan. He took a step forward and lightly patted Ronan's shoulder. I understand your feelings, especially when facing life-threatening situations. I have also backed down before, including Hulk. But now, we have the opportunity to bring them all back, so we must do it. We are prepared to lose our lives at any time, even if one day we really die because of it. That's also worth it for us. Bruce Banner let out a sigh, his expression of pity visible on his face. It seems that from these conversations, he thought of his comrades who had fought alongside him. Unfortunately, they are all gone. Ronan leaned back slightly, and his right foot couldn't help but take a step back. The aggrieved expression on his face disappeared, replaced by a strange expression. What's going on? Why did you suddenly start stirring up emotions? Does he still need to play a little song or something for Bruce Banner? Eru. Swona. Or a piano. Also, did Bruce Banner's recent words represent he was speechless? End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Time Travel, It's Simple for Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Time Travel, It's Simple for Me. He doesn't know if Ronan was evaded by his mouth. But on the other hand, Tony Stark and his team didn't have a very good atmosphere. Tony Stark and his team successfully threw away the space gem, creating an extremely oppressive atmosphere. Steve Rogers and Tony Stark looked at each other, unsure of what to do. Of course, there is also a Scott Lang who doesn't have a strong sense of presence. Is there any other way to get the cosmic cube? That's the space gem. Steve Rogers looked at Tony Stark sitting in an abandoned vehicle and asked again. No, no more. We don't have another chance. Scott Lang appeared a bit angry because they had just made a mistake. He slammed the door of the rear seat tightly, with a classic expression of hand down. We only have one tube of particles each. If you use it, then goodbye. You will never come back home again. Scott Lang stated the most objective conditions. That's right, they only have one tube of particles left, which can only support them to traverse once. However, his words gave Tony Stark a completely new idea. No, there's another way. You can either obtain the cosmic cube or add new particles. Tony Stark got off the car. He seems a bit excited. We can take a few more steps on the path of memories, the military base in New Jersey. You know that place. He pointed to Steve Rogers. The captain is not unfamiliar with this place, but rather very familiar. Because it was in this place that he transformed from a thin and weak white man to the current Captain America. That is the beginning of everything. Are both things there? Raw stones and particles. Steve Rogers took a deep breath and confirmed again. I'm sure, I remember that place, there were those two things at the same time. You know why I know. Tony Stark looked at Steve Rogers. Just as the two of them gazed affectionately at each other, a familiar spatial door quietly appeared beside them. The three of them also shifted their attention to this portal. Steve Rogers raised his shield, and Tony Stark also reached out to his chest. Scott Lang also put on his helmet. What they didn't expect was that Bruce Banner appeared from the portal. Oh, and the young man wearing the Iron Man helmet behind him. You were the one just now. Scott recognized Ronan at a glance. Let me introduce it. He is the Supreme Master of this world, the next Supreme Master, Ronan. Bruce Banner, who was kicked by Ronan, immediately changed his tune. The current task has just been assigned to Ronan, but Ronan has no idea of replacing it. After all, he can't beat Koichi, the next Supreme Master. A few people appeared somewhat surprised by this title. Are you? Strange. Tony Stark blurted out. Is it difficult for them to encounter a young version of Strange? No, your name is Ronan. Tony Stark suddenly thought of Bruce Banner's nickname just now. Ronan shrugged and whispered, Friday, open the mask. Yes, sir. The familiar female voice darkened Tony Stark's eyes. As the sound effect of 50 cents rang out again, the mask opened and Ronan's face appeared in front of several people. And the sentence he said, Friday, also made a few people look at Tony Stark. Everyone knows that Friday is Tony Stark's second artificial intelligence after the appearance of hallucinations. Don't look at me, I don't know anything. Tony Stark not only turned black in front of his eyes, but also his face began to turn black. He remembered what Ronan had said in Stark Tower before. He never expected that Ronan would change so quickly. My name is Ronan, the next Supreme Mage in this world. I'm here to escort this thing and ensure it's safely taken back. As he spoke, Ronan left a blank mark on his face. The eyes of the Ago motorcycle on his chest slowly opened, revealing the time gem inside. Humph. Ben Schwabi is not happy, don't think you have any good looks either. Seeing the appearance of the time stone, several people's expressions relaxed slightly, but they also turned their gaze back to Bruce Banner. They didn't care about Ronan's face. Bruce Banner shrugged, with a look of, that's how things are. Okay. We won't dwell on what's going on for now. Since we have obtained the time gem, we must solve the previous troubles. Tony Stark took a deep breath. The most important thing at present is to obtain space gems and more particles. If you can't get the space gem, there's no point in worrying about who Ronan is. Captain, do you believe me? Tony Stark looked at Steve Rogers, and the two continued their deep gaze just now. Steve Rogers took a deep breath and finally nodded abruptly. Click. I only heard a crisp sound. Several people turned their gaze towards the source of the sound. I saw Ronan holding his phone and looking at them expressionlessly. Look at what I'm doing, you keep talking about words. After speaking, he put his phone back in his pocket and pursed his lips. Okay, at least we have gained something. Next time Tony Stark comes up with something called anti-mage armor, use this photo to threaten him. TSK, these two are almost kissing. At this point, Steve Rogers didn't have time to pay attention to these strange words spoken by Ronan. He threw the scepter in his hand directly to Scott Long. Scott, you and Bruce should go back first. Once we receive the particles, we will be responsible for picking them up. After speaking, the two of them pressed the watches on their wrists bit by bit, and disappeared instantly without waiting for others to speak. They went to New Jersey in 1970. Scott Lang held his scepter, his face full of disbelief. Aren't these two people afraid of not coming back? So, don't you need those white clothes for what you call time travel? Ronan hugged his chest with both hands and raised his eyebrows. Scott's face turned black, and he even forgot about it. This garment was specially prepared by them for traveling through time and space. Without it, the human body would not be able to withstand the tearing force of traveling through time and space. Will you hand over the gemstones to us? Bruce Banner took a deep breath. Ronan looked at him like an idiot, and the meaning was already very clear. Although he is unwilling to go, he cannot disobey Gu Yi's orders. Who knows if his treatment will be to take turns challenging the entire Kamatage mage 1,000 times after returning. Okay, wait for him here, and then go after he comes back. Oh fake, I hope he can bring back enough particles. Bruce Banner slammed his forehead with a cheerful expression on his face. No one could have imagined that things would change like this. This is completely different from their plan. No need, you guys go back first. I'll wait for them here. There are some things you need, but as the next Supreme Mage, I don't need them. Ronan pursed his lips, although unhappy, he still had to pretend. Seeing Ronan like this, the two of them glanced at each other, but there was nothing they could do. Although they don't believe what Ronan said. So, they can only hope that Tony Stark and his team can think of this. Otherwise, it would waste a bottle of particles. Thinking of this, the two of them simultaneously pressed the watches on their wrists, disappearing instantly like the previous two. Time travel seems so simple. Spirited, this idea had just ended, and the next second, Tony Stark's figure appeared again. There seems to be a slight smile on his face. People seem to have matured quite a bit. If the previous Tony Stark still had the confusion and worry of just becoming a father, then now he has finally evolved into his final form. Should it be said that it is truly a bonus of fatherly love buff? Wow, the old version of Iron Man is indeed faster than when he was young. Should it be said that it is a necessary process for men? Ronan Nunu's mouth seemed to indicate something. Tony Stark's face changed, and the smile on his previous face instantly changed. He let out a cold snort in frustration and then threw the box in his right hand to Ronan. Put on this outfit, we're going to start time traveling. Don't be surprised, everything is true. Tony Stark pouted arrogantly, but he clearly wanted to show off something to Ronan. Time travel is a very luxurious thing for many people. Who hasn't had a dream yet, traveling back decades to change their destiny? However, Ronan glanced at the box in his arms and shook his head. Time travel is very simple for me, and I don't need these burdens at all. I just need to. Ronan glanced lightly at the panel inside his system. Secret method gate +2, +1. Features. Exempt from hanging rings and gestures, allowing you to freely open the secret door for crossing. +2 features. It can traverse parallel universes and timelines, but requires manual confirmation of time. Each use has a cooling time of 6 months. This way. As Ronan's right hand drew curves, a golden portal appeared once again in front of the two people. On the other side of the door, those familiar faces of Tony Stark looked towards this place. From their eyes, Ronan saw surprise. Ronan turned his head and looked at Tony Stark. That's it here. At this time, right. End of this chapter.